Hey guys, what's up and welcome to episode 3 of my Pirates of the Burning Sea PvP tutorial series. Today we're going to be tackling another very large subject, and that is going to be defensive tactics in PvP situations, specifically group PvP situations. So granted, this is assuming you've already seen episodes 1 and 2 of this series, and you have a basic understanding of the game. You've gotten your character to level 50, you've got a decent PvP ship, maybe like a Hector or a Unity, probably some type of frigate, and you basically have an understanding of your character's class and your skills based on what class you've chosen. There are times that while participating in group PvP, one side will end up dominating the other, and this can often lead to demoralization, tilted decisions and mistakes, or even just giving up and abandoning ship. This video, however, will hopefully help to balance that out. I've been in situations where a squad with less captains is able to actually outplay a larger group just by using some of the tactics that we're going to cover in this video. Before we get into it, please make sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of the other awesome tutorial episodes or gameplays that come in the future. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the first defensive topic that we're going to cover is going to be defensive skills. I'm only going to cover a few of the basic ones in this video, but each class basically has several skills that you can use to increase your defenses and basically reduce the damage that you take. I'm going to list them here in the video. You can see the naval officer has skills that include scattershot, last stand, invincible, fortress, depending on your spec, and then there's also crew focus maneuver. Scattershot is a skill that's going to increase your defenses based on how many cannonballs hit when you use the skill. Last stand is going to increase not only your defenses, but it also increases your damage and reload, as well as your turn rate as well. Invincible is the classic naval officer skill. You can see that it increases your defenses by 50%. Actually, it increases your damage resistance by 50%, which is huge. And then, of course, Fortress is also going to increase your damage resistance. This is a good one to use when you have someone who's trying to demast you, because it adds a little extra sail defense. But it does limit, it puts a cap on your morale, so sometimes it's not good to keep this on all the time, but if you're in a situation where you need the extra defense, maybe you're being targeted, it is good to have this. And then crew focus maneuver, I don't know if many people knew this, but this is one of the basic skills that everyone has. Not only does it help you turn, but it actually gives you plus 5% defense, so there's that. The next class is privateer. The main one that you're going to be using on privateer is going to be evasion. You also have battle preparations defense, which is really good when it's used with the unpredictability resist skill. So if you know that you're about to be targeted as a privateer, you're going to want to pop both of those at the same time. And then of course we also have crew focus maneuver. For the free trader, probably one of the less common classes you see in PvP, but still very viable, especially in group situations. You have things like evasion as well. You also have a group defense buff, which actually affects everyone in the group. There's also inspiration, which is another defense buff that is for your whole group. And then there's, again, crew focus maneuver. Now, I understand that there are other skills that are defensive, but we're just not going to cover those in this video. We're just going to go over some of the basics. Alright, so the next section I want to talk about is repairs. I'm actually going to be splitting these up into different tiers. Now, the higher the tier is, the more expensive it is going to be to use or to acquire the repair. But the main thing is that each tier is going to have its own separate cooldown timer, which is also going to affect your playstyle and situational awareness. But we're going to talk more on that later, so let's jump into the repairs. Okay, so the first repair we can talk about are going to be the career repairs. Now, each class has at least one skill that's going to repair your ship's armor, and some actually have multiple, like the free trader. All right, so we're going to start off with the naval officer. The naval officer has one career repair that you can use as a skill, and that's going to be emergency repairs, and it actually does quite a lot. You'll see here it repairs your armor, it also repairs your structure, and then also a little bit of sales as well. One thing that a lot of people didn't know is that it actually will also remove one debuff from you. Now the key here is you have to be debuffed. You have to be actively debuffed. So if you use this before you get hit with the debuff, it's not going to. There's nothing for it to clear. So, for example, you see here if a player gets hit with cut shroud or disable rigging or broken rudder, you can click emergency repairs on the naval officer, and it's going to remove that as well as begin repairing your ship. Now, the privateer is going to have two skills that repair. One is going to be improvised armor, which is going to only repair the armor, which is, again, the outer circle of your health. It doesn't repair any structure, so just keep note of that. And then the other skill you're going to have on the privateer is improvised sails. These are both on separate cooldowns, which is really nice, but you have one, again, that's just for armor, and then one that's just for sails. The free trader is actually the class that has the most repairs that are skill-based. One of them can be learned just regularly from the free trader trainer, and then the other one actually comes as a career mission. So again, it's super important that you do during your career missions, especially as a free trader, because check it out, you actually get a whole extra repair skill that's on a separate cooldown. The free trader also has a sail repair. That's a skill. And again, the biggest thing about these is that they're 3 separate cooldowns. You can use them all at the same time, or you can space them out depending on what's going on in the battle. Alright guys, tier 2 repairs. We're going to talk about some of the basic consumables and the best one available. So these are going to be things like your hull patch, the mast brace, structural brace, spare guns, and rum. Now, each one of these specifically repairs a certain part of your ship. However, they all share the same cooldown. So, for example, if I use a mast brace to fix some of my sails, I'm going to have to wait for that full cooldown before I can click another hull patch or a structural brace or some extra guns, right? When you're PvPing, there really is one standard repair that you should be using for this cooldown timer, and that's going to be the Admiral's Overhaul First Rate. Now, the reason why is because it repairs a little bit of everything, and if you use anything less in a fight, you're simply going to be putting yourself at a disadvantage because the opponent is probably going to be using these type of repairs as well. Don't get me wrong, if you're getting shot at and you don't have Admiral's First Rate, you know, any repairs are literally better than none. But if you want to be competitive, you're going to want to have the standard PvP materials, which in this case, the meta is Admiral's First Rate. Sometimes Tyrant's Overhaul can work as well, but that does have a side effect where it takes away some of your crew. Alright guys, tier 3 of repairs, we're going to talk about experts. Expert is another consumable type that can be used. The great thing about it is these are all, again, on a separate cooldown timer than your basic consumables and career skills. So there are a few different types of experts in the game, but for this guide we're going to focus on 2 main ones, the expert carpenter and the expert sailmasters. So expert carpenter is our main one here. Again, it's going to give you extra health for your ship. Pretty basic. It's not going to be as much repairing done, as big of a repair compared to something like an Admiral's First Rate or the naval officer's emergency repairs. But it can get you out of trouble in a pinch. So they're important to have these as well. The other expert that we want to address is the Sailmaster. This item actually repairs your sails, but it also gives you a slight speed boost as well. There are also other experts like gunners and captains, which can help increase things like your damage and reload, but main thing to note is that the experts all share the same cooldown, which is actually 30 minutes, so it's a decently long cooldown. So you want to make sure that you're using this when you really need to, because once you use it, you're probably not going to be able to use it in the same battle unless it's like a super long battle, like a port battle or something like that. So for example, if I use an expert sailmaster for the extra speed boost, let's say, just know that I wouldn't be able to use another carpenter for the next 30 minutes. Okay. Alright guys, tier 4 which is the final tier of repairs, is going to be called salvaging supplies. There's actually a mission you can do at Pointe à Pitre that gives a total of 5 free salvaging at the end of the mission. And once you complete the mission, the only other way though that you can get more salvaging is to actually buy them on the treasure aisle with burning sea points, which is the real money pay to win mechanic in the game. So this repair, salvaging supplies, gets the award for the most expensive repair in the game. However, it is on its own totally separate cooldown, so if you have salvaging repairs, it can actually give you quite the competitive edge over your opponent. It actually saves your life a lot of times. Now, for instance, imagine, if you and your enemy have both burned your career repairs, you've both used an admiral's, you've both used an expert carpenter's, but you have a salvaging supply and the enemy doesn't, you have the advantage over the enemy because you can outlive the enemy in the battle. Alright guys, so just in summary, let me start off by saying this. Repairs are OP. The key to properly using your repairs is going to be properly managing the different cooldowns. Now, the more repairs you have, the longer you can stay in a fight. In a group PvP situation, managing your repairs will also determine your playstyle. So, for example, if I have all my repairs available, I can play more aggressive because if I get targeted or take damage, I know that I can click 2 or 3 different repairs and heal back to full health. On the other hand, if my repairs are on cooldown, my playstyle is going to be a little more conservative. So you can still get in the fight, but just know if you get targeted, you're going to need to employ some other defensive tactics to get out of the line of fire and basically buy time until you can use your repairs again. This actually leads me to my next topic, which is a relatively simple concept that often gets overlooked, and it's actually going to be taking distance from the enemy line. Now this seems pretty basic, but I wanted to address this now in the video since it's also going to come back up again later. So cannons deal damage up to about 700-750 yards max with round shot. But it really starts to hurt when you're about 600 or less away from your enemy. So if you're closer, it's going to deal more damage, especially if you're being shot by multiple enemies. So if you notice that you start getting shot in a group situation, one tactic that you can use to stay alive is to simply sail away from the enemy. Some people call this kiting, but it's basically staying out of range. The idea is that if you are out of range, then you can't be killed. Simple as that. Another little tip that kind of fits into this same topic is going to be spreading your damage. Now, this is less applicable for line fights, and it really comes more into play for something like a 1v1, or if, let's say, the enemy charges your line and things just turn into a huge brawl where everybody's turning and you're not really in a formation. So when you're being shot, the game mechanic works that you only take damage in one area of your ship. So, for example, during this clip, the enemy wants to shoot me in my stern, but I am turning ever so slightly, which actually causes the enemy's shots to land on my sides, which have some armor to spare, so it does less structural damage, and I actually stay alive for a little bit longer. Now, if I didn't wiggle around and ended up taking these shots in the stern, in the rear, I'd already probably have sunk in earlier, but by doing this, it actually forces the enemy to waste a few extra shots on me. Then they need to reload. That's time that they're not shooting my friends, and in that time my teammates are also busy getting their shots in as well, as the enemy is busy focusing on trying to just finish me off. Alright guys, we'll go ahead and move on for right now, but we will come back to this again in the final review at the end of the video when we discuss the topic of situational awareness. But that means, guys, it's finally time to address everybody's favorite subject when it comes to defensive PvP, and that is blocking. Now, blocking is the most important tactic to understand when it comes to group PvP. It's definitely without a doubt the #1 defensive maneuver that's going to be used, but also can be hard to master early on because of what usually comes after, which we will also discuss in just a moment in this video. So let's talk about it. Now, first things first, what is a block, right? Now, a block is when a player uses his or her ship to physically block the enemy's intended target. So essentially, you're using a physical object, another ship, to cut off the line of fire, thus making it impossible to deal any damage to the intended target. It's pretty sweet, right? Now, there are a million ways to block someone, but for this series, we're actually going to talk about the two main ways or methods that you can do this while also maintaining a line formation. That's the key. We're going to want to stay in formation with the rest of the group so that while defending our teammate, we're actually still able to output damage and shoot the enemy at the same time. Okay. Now, the first type of block we're going to discuss is going to come from the player in front of you if you're the target. Now, in this method, the ship in front of the target is actually going to drop their sails, come to a stop, and allow the targeted player to sail up next to them on the outside, on the outer side of the line. Now, the key here is for everyone to keep moving once you successfully block the target. You don't want to keep your sails down once you have the block. You want to keep it moving, and so that the players at the back of the line can continue to keep the block going as they pass the target. The former target should be able to just cycle in at the rear of the line once they've had a chance to safely repair. And that's actually the other responsibility. If you're the targeted player and you catch the block, once you're behind, you must use your repairs and heal up fully during this time so that once the line sails past you, you can cycle back in and you're going to be full health, and just in case you get targeted again. So basically, if you get a block, use it. All right, the second type of block is actually going to come from the player behind you. For instance, let's say that you're the first person in line. If you get targeted, there's nobody in front of you who can drop sails so you can catch the block. So in this case, the targeted player is going to want to sail a little bit away from the line to create space. And then you're going to want to drop your sails, which is going to allow your teammates to catch up to you and then block for you. If you keep sailing, there's no way your team who's behind you is going to be able to block for you. So if you're in front, you gotta, again, make a little space and then drop your sails so that your teammates can catch up and cover you up. Once you're properly covered up, again, there's gonna be two responsibilities. The team, you're gonna wanna keep them covered while you're shooting the enemy. And then if you're the target, you're gonna wanna use your repairs while you're covered up. Remember to cycle back in at the end of the line, and if for some reason you're getting shot between the holes, sometimes it's also a good idea to maybe take a little bit of distance as well. All right, guys, so we've talked about the basic defensive skills, some basic repairs. We've talked about taking distance and spreading your damage around, and then also blocking. Now, the last step is going to be to put all of these together, and just to make things easier, I'm going to call this section Situational Awareness. Now, each fight is going to be different, right? Sometimes both sides are going to stay in parallel lines the entire time. Other times, one side might charge the other, and then the battle ends up just becoming a huge brawl without lines, and everyone's just mixing in and shooting each other. So the only true way to get better at your craft and situational awareness is simply to just see a lot of different situations. So, of course, the more you PvP, the more you're going to know and recognize as it's happening. But let's just go through a couple basic examples to summarize everything that we've gone over, and then hopefully that'll be enough to at least get you on your own 2 feet in the PvP world. Now, in PvP, everything's happening at the same time. So your team is shooting the enemy is shooting you. Let's talk about what to do during and after a block, right? Now, as a blocker, when you give a block to someone, your ship is now exposed to the enemy because you're literally standing in the line of fire. Now, for this reason, it's usually a good idea to maybe pop 1 or 2 defensive skills when you're giving a block, because you're literally choosing to expose yourself in order to protect your ally who's the previous target, right? It's also important to try and pop these defensive skills preemptively, meaning before you get shot, because if the enemy decides to shoot you next, it's going to help reduce some of that damage, right? Now, If the enemy does switch their target to you, you also want to have your repairs ready as well. If you have all of your repairs available and your defensive skills ready, you really should have no fear for blocking your teammate. However, if your teammate needs a block and let's say you've already used your repairs that are on cooldown, it's important that this is why it's important to keep the line moving behind you so that the next person can give you a block as well. However, if your teammate needs a block and let's say you've already used your repairs and they're on cooldown now, this is why it's important to keep the rest of the line moving so that they can catch up to you too, and then you can quickly catch the next block or maybe take some distance once you've been covered up. So once you catch a block, your main responsibility is going to be to survive and heal back up so that you can get back into the fight, help deal some more damage to the other team, and hopefully take out one of their players. Now, if you have repairs, you can simply catch the block and then cycle back in at the rear of the line as they continue to sail forward past you. However, if you have cooldowns and you don't have your repairs available, once you catch the block, you need to move in a way that combines catching distance but also stays behind the block, right? Because you're already low health. Now, basically, you want to sail in a diagonal away from the line, away from the enemy, so that you are still moving with your line and you're still blocked, but you're also starting to pull a little bit of distance from the enemy line as well. Now, once you get repairs off cooldown, it's safer to return to the action and start shooting again. Just be aware if you get targeted again, since the enemies are also probably aware that you just used repairs and are on cooldown. Okay guys, that's going to just about do it for this episode of the PvP tutorial on defensive tactics. Now I know that we've covered a lot of stuff, but this game is so huge that it's actually highly probable that I've probably missed a thing or two. So please comment below what you think of the video or any other defensive tips and tricks that you may have for in the game. Now, if you haven't already, please remember to hit like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on the future episodes of the tutorial gameplay. But otherwise guys, thanks again for watching. My name is Gamma. It's gonna be Christmas this week, so happy holidays to you all and smooth sailing. Peace.